Hello and welcome to the Villarreal Update, a podcast brought to you by Villarreal USA. I'm Jamie Kemble and I'm here today with treasured Villarreal USA writer Rahul Lakhani. How are you, Rahul?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm buzzing for Sunday. It's been a mixed start to the season so far, but Barcelona at home is always a fun occasion.
It is indeed. You mentioned the start of the season. We'll start on that. Mixed start, like you said, a loss to Real Betis, a pretty heartbreaking loss it was. And then Villarreal bounced back with a narrow win over Mallorca. Had a pretty good season last season, to be fair. So a pretty good winner away from home. So what have you made of the start of the first two games?
Well, I think it was always going to be a case given the high kind of turnover within the squad this summer. A lot of key players leaving, a lot of players joining. Still not, well, I think still not completing the transfer window. I think there's going to be a lot of kind of adjusting in these first few weeks to kind of the new players need to adjust to the system. Setien needs to kind of get an idea of what his best team is. And so I thought the win over Mallorca, it wasn't the prettiest win, but I think it was a good win just to get a win and a clean sheet away from home, to get the new boys in. Ben Brereton Diaz, for example, looked quite good. Gerald Moreno back on the score sheet. I think at the start of the game, I'd have maybe thought try and get a bit more fluid going forward. But by half time, I thought a 1-0 win would be brilliant right now. And so fair play, there's 3 points on the board. And I thought the Betis game, I think it wasn't great, but to lose in the 95th minute as well is just brutal. And they are a good team. I don't think there's too much kind of heartbreak. Well, not there's a bit of heartbreak, but I don't think there's too much anger at kind of losing to a good team like Betis, who are in a much more settled place right now than Villarreal.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Betis game was an interesting one because we came into the season with kind of the feeling of, well, I'm not sure how this is going to go, given, like you said, that all the exits and a pretty awful pre-season results wise and performance wise as well, to be fair. So it's kind of a strange one. He just didn't know which way he's going to go. And then they got back into the game 1-1. They thought, oh, this could be a really good point. And like you said, what happened after happened. Like you said, Betis, I feel like they've kind of suffered from the financial wave that struck La Liga as well and haven't really been able to strengthen. But like you said, at least they haven't had that kind of big turnover of players, and that kind of helped them get the win, and a couple of mistakes along the way from Villarreal as well. But still a decent performance. Then you go to Mallorca, like you said, good. Signs of progress. I think it's fair to say it wasn't a total package. It's not going to be at this stage. But like you said, a couple of those boxes ticked that need to tick in. You know, that Gerard Moreno and Ben Brereton Diaz getting a run out, and I think he needed to convince as well. Although there's a lot of excitement around his signing, I think there's kind of is he quite this level? Haven't played in the Championship, but I think he's already starting at least to prove that he's got that talent, and I think he said DM will trust him more going forward as well. So a mixed start, yeah, to be fair, but I think Villarreal fans, given the pre-season, the big turnover, would probably take the start that they've had so far. Like you said, 3 points on the board. It could have been four, of course, but signs of progress and signs of this squad still being up to the level of a top six finish, despite all that's happened in the summer. And like you said, we're yet to see some of the signings that are hopefully going to come in. And we'll go there next, actually, to transfers. We've got, what is it, 7-8 days to time of recording until the end of the window. September 1st, it shuts. What do you want to see? What are the priorities you think Villarreal should be chasing? We already know, I'll start by saying they already know they're not going to go for a goalkeeper now as things stand. So we'll leave that one off the table for now. We'd all want to see a goalkeeper, I think. But we're stuck with Jorgensen and Reina, I think, until at least January. Livakovic has gone to Galatasaray, it looks. So what other areas need strengthening? Where should Villarreal be looking in these last kind of 8 days?
Well, I think in my head before, as you say just now, I would have put a lot of the kind of budget that's come in for Jackson, for Pau Torres, for Chukwueze. I'd have put a fair chunk of that on a good goalkeeper for the long term. But here we are, there's Jorgensen in goal, and I guess just have to see how he does. If he can at least last till January, then maybe reconsider. If he does well, then who knows? He's a young keeper, he could be the long term option. In terms of other options, I think it's not been the worst window considering kind of at the start. Yeah, Pau Torres, brilliant defender, leaving. Jackson, I think, got a good fee from overall. Great player, doing quite well at Chelsea, but he's only played half the season for Villarreal in the end. And to get I think it's a third record sale in the club's history for him. I think that's just good business all round. And Chukwueze is a bit of a gutting one. I think he finally come into some really good form by
Yeah,
the end of last season. And it's after years of kind of he would do well, then get injured or lose his place, lose a bit of form. Last season, he was really showing that consistent level that everyone thought he could be. And then to go and not even get, I can't remember off the top of my head, it's less than 25 million. I think it's worth a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
more than that. And so, in terms of the incomings, like I'm impressed with kind of Santi Comisana. I think he's a good addition. He's proven in La Liga. Brereton Diaz, as I've said before, I'm really excited to see. I thought it was brilliant in the first half against Mallorca, and that's just the start. I think once he gets on a score sheet, I think he will really start firing. Sorloth's an interesting one. I think that came out of nowhere completely, and I'm quite a fan of the player. I think he's the kind of physical presence that Villarreal needed up front for a while. When, for example, when there's Paco Alcácer up front with Gerard Moreno playing alongside him, it worked better when Carlos Bacca was there as a bit more of a battering ram
yeah,
to
yeah,
give Moreno more space. And I think Sorloth can be that kind of player. He's good at passing, and at times in the past he has had a good goal record. I think it was a Turkish league, but when he was there a few years ago, he scored something like 35 goals. And if he can get something like 12 goals this season, providing a lot of hold up play, a lot more to the team than just goals, but that should be a target as well, then I think that's a good signing. And it was something like 8 million. You don't really get a lot of value like that in the market. And then Gabbia from Milan, the centre back. It's early days. He's looked promising, but it remains to be seen kind of what he can do. It's a signing where it's in a position where Pau Torres has left, and I would have quite liked someone a bit more experienced to come in, or at least a bit more proven quality. Gabby is a bit of an unknown quantity, and it could go either way. He could be brilliant, or if he's a total disaster, then there's less options there. So actually, I do think now, thinking about it, the priority now should be another centre back. I think Raul Albiol, as great as he is, he's getting on a bit. He's quite old. Cuenca I like, but again, there's question marks over whether he's the top level or whether he's kind of a mid-table level. And Issa Mandi, it's a weird one with him because he's been very disappointing until the back end of last season, at which point he turned brilliant. And again, it's too much of a, in that kind of position, you want someone more secure in a way. You don't want someone who could be a complete bomb scare at times, but like Mandy can. And so I would have liked someone more, a bit more proven quality, and someone like Clement Lenglet, if he doesn't end up moving to Spurs, if a cheap loan deal from Barcelona, if it's possible, could be like a shrewd addition, a good addition at the end of the window. And I think that is the area that, above all else, I think Villarreal are well stocked going forward, pretty well stocked in midfield. Even at fullback, there's enough options to cover where, yeah, you don't have kind of someone who can be a liability in the team. And I think just one more centre back would make it a pretty good window considering.
yeah. I'd agree with that. I think interesting. You mentioned Longley, someone Barcelona trying to get rid of. I mean, as ever with Villarreal, the wages are a question mark. But I think given the situation, Barca, I don't think they've even registered Inigo Martinez yet because of the kind of the salary cap issues they've got. They'd probably be willing to let Longley go for next to nothing, probably, especially having loaned it out last year as well. So, yeah, I think a centre back has to be a priority. Like you said, Mandy can be a bomb scare in your words, and I agree with that. And Cuenca as well. He kind of fits into that category at the moment as well. He's got real talent at times, but then at other times just kind of dives into challenges like there's no tomorrow. All the attacker has to do is give a bit of a feint, and he's all the way in, and that's real concern. And he is still young, he's still developing. He hasn't played enough football at this level to really give a verdict on him. But yeah, he's got that in him, unfortunately, and hopefully can kind of coach out over time. But going into a season where Villarreal will have expectations of finishing top six, like you said, you can't really have those liabilities. You don't want to see those liabilities at least in his starting centre back partnership, right? Like you didn't mind last season with Mandy coming in here and there, because while he does make mistakes, it will be on average every 3 or 4 games. So when he's coming in here and there, it's not the end of the world. And like you said, we saw the best of him last season as well. The same goes for Cuenca as well. And Raul, like you said, is aging very quickly now. She's had an injury, he's kept him out for 4 or 5 months. So it's kind of a sign that he's getting on. And when he has these injuries, it takes him longer to come back. There's also that factor as well. So yeah, and Gabby's done well so far. So I think centre back signing, while I wouldn't mind someone like Longley, I think that'll be an important signing, someone of that stature. We hope to see a bit of long-term vision as well in this in whoever they're going to sign, because they typically signed veterans on short-term deals over the last few years, and Albiol's been a good example of that. But more of a risk in terms of at some point you're going to have to sign another player further down the line, and we've seen that with Coquelin as well. It was a risky signing. I know it's not nowhere near as old, but you sign these kind of riskier signings and you're just going to find yourself kicking the can down the road, I think. So a bit of vision would be nice. So perhaps they go and sign an experienced defender, then invest in a younger defender who's going to come in down the line. But this is a problem they're going to have to face, whether it's this summer or beyond. I do wonder if they'll go and sign a winger as well. I think he'd like more competition there. When Jeremy Pino hasn't been available at the start of the season, I think we've seen that quite short of depth on the wing. Alejandro Baena's played wide, which is not his best position, if you ask me. And the fact that they're playing players in kind of not in their best position shows the lack of depth we've got out there. And hopefully, when Jeremy Pino comes in, you'll see a stronger lineup. Gerard Moreno, I think, is best out wide. Certainly has shown that over the last few years. And Ben Burton Diaz is better out wide as well, to be fair. He's thought of as a striker by some, but from all accounts we've spoke to at Blackburn, he's definitely better as a winger. And then you've got obviously Solot to play in a more central role. So yeah, at least someone who can play wing, or even if it's a kind of a younger striker who can play wing. And we've seen Elias as well being part of the squad. So that's kind of it was sold to us as a B team signing, but it's almost certain that he'll play a regular part in the first team this season. So on Elias, nice segue actually to his former club Barcelona. An exciting game, as you mentioned earlier, Villarreal versus Barcelona this Sunday in the, what are we calling now, EA Sports FC La Liga, I think these days. Estadio de la Cerámica, Villarreal with a home advantage. It should be an interesting one. Barcelona also had a pretty mixed start to the season, a draw in their opener, frustrating one against a frustrating Getafe team. That's all you can describe them as. And then, again, a poor performance really against Cadiz, 2-0 win. But they were really poor for 70 minutes before they scored, and then they managed to pick them off towards the end. What have you seen much of Barcelona? What do you make of them, if so? Robert Lewandowski yet to get up and running, and I think they've had a frustrating summer as well. So what do you make of them so far, and what do you expect on Sunday?
Watching them so far, I'm not that convinced that they're that good. I don't think they've been bad as such. I think against Getafe, they never ever win there. They've drawn their last 3 in a row there, I think that is just a game where they have to just go in with that knowing that they're going to get kicked off the pitch and draw 0-0. And against Cadiz, I don't know. I don't think they were at their very fluid best, but I don't think they were poor in the sense that they created a fair amount. And I think Ledesma in goal made some really good saves. And I think that was just kind of the difference. If they scored one of those opportunities early on, they could have kind of calm down a bit and just stroll to a more comfortable win. And then, later on, Pedri got the goal, and he's now actually injured. He's now injured for the next month. And I think that will be a huge loss for them. And it's just they've kind of, at the start of the season, they've experimented a bit. They've already played kind of 2 different formations. They played Frenkie de Jong near enough as a centre-back the other day. And I think there's a case of kind of with these additions, I'm not convinced Xavi knows what his best team is. He keeps deviating between kind of 2 wingers with Rafinha and then either Ferran Torres or Ansu Fati or Abde on the other wing. Or he's now been playing Pedri as kind of an inside winger with a 3-man midfield. And with Pedri out, it'll be interesting to see which route he goes down. If he plays 2 kind of dangerous wingers to maybe support Lewandowski a bit more, to have a bit more of a direct approach, or if he just tries to go for possession again and plays, 5 centre midfielders with Romeo and Gundogan as well. So I think, again, because they've had just so much, chaos in the summer between their financial situation, the signings in and out, it's still uncertain what can happen in the next week, whether Fatty leaves, whether someone like João Felix comes in. Like they're just a bit. It's a bit of chaos there, and this is probably a good time to face them at home, where they're not convinced. They'd be under big pressure to get a win, especially if Real Madrid win as well this weekend. And yeah, with the team not kind of firing well, with no Pedri there, with Lewandowski, a lot of pressure on him, it might be the best time to play them. And yeah, I think I'm honestly confident. I think out of all the last few years, whenever Barcelona have come to play Villarreal, there's obviously little confidence when you're going up against kind of a team that has Messi or has Busquets and is completely firing in on goal, where you're facing an informed Lewandowski and going to score a hat trick in any given game. I don't think that's the case anymore, and I could be wrong, and I could get killed by Barca fans who love slaughtering me on Twitter. But yeah, I'm honestly confident in at least a draw, and I think a draw would be a great result right now.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I had the team up somewhere, see if we can get back up. But yeah, it's not as convincing as recent years, like you said. I think Romeo's a kind of a smart signing, but also not someone who kind of oozes quality to Barcelona level. It just feels like a weaker Barca squad to what we've seen in previous years. You look at even Balde, I think he's a really good player, but he's a player you can catch out. Lewandowski's struggling for form. De Jong's certainly not at his best in a kind of centre back role. So, like you said, it's a really unsettled Barca side at the moment, and it feels like that from inside and out. We were done okay against Barcelona, in recent times. If you sort of remember the PK incident with the handball, that's a game we certainly should have got more out of, in a cracking game as well. So I think, like you said, it's a good time to play them because Villarreal, it feels like a free hit, doesn't it? Like I know it can feel like that anyway against Barcelona and Real Madrid, particularly away from home. Although Villarreal have got in the last couple of years in particular have done really well against the bigger sides. But it kind of is a free hit on the basis of even with the first two performances, Villarreal fans are not really expecting much from this team at the moment. That may change as performances improve, as results improve, and they prove people wrong. But given what happened in the summer, I don't think there's the excitement that was there across recent seasons. And it just feels like most Villarreal fans might settle for a top six finish this season, with half an eye on maybe a little bit more. But in recent seasons, it's like been this team's ready to finish top four, and the European success has detracted from that, and the fans have really settled for that as they should. But and then you had the turbulence of last season where the change of manager, and then you couldn't really expect all that much more than what Villarreal produced, which was a pretty decent season on the whole anyway. So this feels more than ever, I guess, what I'm saying is as a free hit against a Barca side who won the league, and although they've had a bit of chaos over the summer, they're still a very decent team. Have kept their manager obviously through the summer, and still have an exciting project, as we call it these days, to build on. So I think, like you said, a draw here would be a good result, and I wouldn't put Villarreal past a win. To be fair, I'm not expecting that going into this weekend. Barca are favourites; they should be. But I mean, like you said, it's a good time to play them. Lewandowski seems a bit low on confidence. Xavi hardly kind of supported him in his recent comments. He's going to kind of try and do hard to finish, and he's just relax and that kind of thing. So that'll be on his mind for sure. He's a good enough striker to score even with that pressure, of course. But Raul Albiol should be back. That's the kind of perfect man to mark Lewandowski, who's not particularly pacey anyway. So, I mean, yeah, things are famous last words, but things are falling into place to play, like you said, to play Barca at a good time, and Villarreal should be at least relatively confident again something out of this game. And if they did get a result, that would almost instantly change expectations for the season, I'm sure. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and we'll see what kind of performance they produce on the weekend. It's probably going to be a cagey game for the most part. Two teams would like to have possession and will battle for possession rather than going all for it. And we'll see what kind of happens, and hopefully we see more of Ben and Diaz. I feel like this is a kind of game might drop him back to the bench for. He might look for experienced La Liga players, players who played against Barca before and against the Xavi system, perhaps. I think we'll see Yeremy Pino for this one. Hopefully he's back and ready for it. So let's see how it turns out. I'll ask you before we go for a prediction. So put it on the line. What are you going for?
Ooh, I think Villarreal will score. I can see, especially if Jeremy starts and Sorloth starts as well. I can kind of see Sorloth kind of creating space for him, especially if De Jong's at centre back. So I think definitely score. I'll go with an optimistic 1-1.
I'm going to go more optimistic than that. I'm actually going to say 3-1 to Villarreal. I haven't
Ooh.
got any basis for that. Don't ask for reasoning. I'll give you some anyway. I mean, I just got a good feeling about this game, to be fair. I think there's a quiet buzz about Villarreal, like because of the surprising kind of quality. I think they feel like they've got people to prove wrong. I think people in the squad will have seen the kind of the mourning of the loss of the three big players and the kind of that's kind of our season done or whatever. I think they feel like they got a point to prove and they feel like they probably just can produce performances just as good without them. And I think that I think Barcelona are a bit on a low at the moment. Not the best two performances we've seen. No one turned up for the Montjuic game, which was a bit of a shock for everyone. Has made kind of bad headlines, and I can just see Villarreal going 2-1 ahead at some stage, Barca chasing the game, and someone picking them off for 3-1. So it'll come back to haunt me, I'm sure. It's a very optimistic. You called yours optimistic, so mine certainly is. But hey, if we do, we'll be out partying in Valencia on Sunday night, and scorching Valencia as well. It's 37 degrees here right now. Before I start to sweat profusely, we'll wrap this up. And thank you for coming on, Rahul. We'll obviously get you on in future, part of the team. And we'll do plenty of these podcasts as the season goes on, especially for the big games like Barcelona, etc. So thank you for coming on, and thanks for everyone for listening. We'll be back with more video content through the week. We'll have a quick recap from the ground on Sunday after the game, and then a more in-depth look back at the game early next week. So stay tuned on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you find us. And of course, head to Villarreal USA for more in-depth written Villarreal content.